Hi guys, my name is Lexi, and today we are going to alter a prom dress. Only thing that we are doing is a hem on the lining because the top layer is perfect on her with her heels, and we are also adding a bustle. We're going to keep the length of the lining the same in the front and just cut off the train on the lining. So there's actually a trick to doing this that makes it look like it was never altered. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is how I've pinned the lining. This is the side seam, so you can see the front of the dress is actually perfect length for her because we don't need to take anything off. But you'll see there's this part where it goes from being straight across to where I have to curve it. Obviously I don't want to stitch that down because that will look not very pretty. So the trick is actually to open up this seam here a good bit, maybe 4 to 6 inches, and that will give us enough room to graduate it in. My supervisor came to check on me. So the hem is done, and now we're going to work on the bustle. So I got a rhinestone button at my placement just below the butt, and then a little further down we have the place where we're going to put the loop for the bustle, so it'll pin up like that. For bustle loops, especially on prom dresses, what I used to do is take regular sewing thread and crochet them about 4 threads thick. And that used to work, but what I actually like to do when I do bustles is take some thicker thread, string it through a thicker needle, and poke that thread through the entire thickness of whatever I'm bustling, so that way she can pull the loop down when she doesn't want it to show and pull it up when she's ready to bustle. So I've run into some problems doing that with some crocheted thread. Maybe I'm just not good at crocheting. So what I've used instead now is embroidery thread. I just bought a variety pack online for maybe like 10 bucks. And this embroidery thread matches her dress perfectly. So that'll be a really nice camouflaged bustle for her. And we are using a rhinestone button that will match the bedazzledness of the bodice. So I just replaced the safety pin with a pin so it's easier to pull out. And because I am right-handed, I am going to flip the opening of the dress to the right so I can get my sewing hand in there easier. Flippity-doo. Okay, there I am. I got my thread right here, and I'm just gonna go up underneath, and there is a seam allowance here, so I'm gonna fold that to one side, and I'm gonna go through that surged seam allowance just to give myself a little more stability. And I got my needle through so I can remove my pin now. All right. So I'm pulling my thread through. I have my needle here, and now I'm going to string my button through. Now, sometimes when you're doing buttons, you got to make sure, especially with decorative buttons like this, that your needle's not too big for the hole. This has a pretty big hole on it, so I'm pretty confident we can go through, and we sure did. We made it through just fine. So I'm going to go through like that, and then I'm going to go down and through the other side. And I already have a hole there from where I pinned it, so I'm going to use that hole as my guideline, because why put extra holes in the dress, you know? And that way my button is going to cover that hole. Alright, going through that hole. So now that I did that, I'm going to pull everything through, and I'm going to flip it over so I can see where I've started my button on this side, okay? And anytime I do that, I'm gonna pull all this excess through, pulling till I get to the very end, and then I'm gonna go through the middle of it and make like a continuous loop so that if anything were to come undone, a very last ditch effort, it's really not going to ever come out. And once I do that, I will go ahead and tie a knot. So right here is the actual midline of the back of the dress, and then this is all serged seam allowance. So when I make my knot, I'm going to make sure it's in that seam allowance so no one sees it. So I'm going to make a knot here. Again, I'm going to go through, I'm going to leave a little bit of a loop, and I'm going to go through once, I'm going to go through twice. I might even go through 3 times because I'm feeling frisky. Why not? Make a nice tight knot. So that's really not going anywhere. Now, because I am a little bit of a perfectionist, I am going to go back through again. I'm going to go back through my button again because I'd rather it be secure than not. So here I go. I'm going to go back through. There's already a hole here, so I'm going to go back through this hole. Okay, and then out on the other side, here I am. I'm already back through that hole. I'm going to go through the button. Going through that button, pull it through, and this time before I go back down, getting a little tight now. I'm going through a second time, so I gotta be a little bit careful with all my threads and all my needle. Okay, got it through. Pull, all the way, nice and tight, and then I'll take it down back through here. So now I'll go back underneath. Okay, looks like I got a little off center, so I'm going to center myself before I go back through that seam allowance. Awesome. Pull. Alright, everything's nice and tight. And I'm going to do it again. On the seam, the serged seam allowance that no one's ever going to see, I'm going to make my second knot, going through once. And I see there's some little like extra threads here. I'm going to grab up those in this knot too. Why not? Why not knot the knot?
You know who made it.
Alright, this is my final knot, so I'm going to go through at least twice. Again, 3 times, because why not? That's really not going anywhere. And now because I have this wonderful little serged seam allowance part, I'm actually going to put my needle through this and just kind of guide it down a little bit. So I'm hiding the end of my thread inside of that seam allowance. So I'm pushing it in through here and pulling it out through here. And when I pull that through and I cut it off, then there's not just going to be a random little tail hanging out. It's going to be inside of her dress. It's just little things like that that I think make your hand sewing look a lot neater than something that isn't isn't nice. So there's no tail there, which is nice. Okay, let's see what it looks like on the outside. Awesome. The button is right on that center back seam, and it's looking very pretty. We can't see any threads. I like it a lot. Awesome. Next step is going to be to go down here and create the loop for her bustle. So this time I'm going to take a bigger needle because I am actually going to be threading embroidery thread. Alright, so normally what I would use for like a bridal bustle, for example, is this crocheted thread, okay? You can get this from Wawak. It comes in several different colors, but I, for example, obviously this white's not going to look very nice on this dusty blue dress, So, and this needle is a little bit aggressive for what I'm dealing with right now. So I am actually going to downgrade to a slightly smaller needle. Still quite large, mind you. It's still a pretty big needle. But this is going to allow me to thread the thicker embroidery thread. So, you don't need very much, to be honest. I'm going to just kind of cut off a very a decent amount there. I don't need very much, so I don't need to cut off very much. So there I go. Again, this is the part where you probably want to use some wax. So beeswax is something you can get at even places like Hobby Lobby sell it. I got mine, I think online. Wax sells it. You know, there's a lot of different places you can get wax. So wax is just basically a nice little thing to keep your threads together, especially nice when you're working with multiple threads. And it's going to help me a lot with trying to thread embroidery thread through this needle. Oh, look at that. It did it pretty much perfect on the first go. I love that. So because I'm trying to be as discreet as possible. I'm not going to double this or anything. This is only one layer. It's just a stretch satin polyester. It's not super, super heavy, so I'm not going to do double layers on this. I am only going to do one. But what I am going to do on the underside is I'm going to put a clear button. Now, why do I put a clear button? There's a couple different reasons I want to do that. I don't ever want the actual holes that I'm going to be punching through with this very large needle to put undue stress on this material. And it is a little bit, it's a little bit heavy, just for one single point. So I think this button is going to help. Is it truly necessary? No. It's just something that I like to do, so that's what I'm going to do. So on the underside, look at her undercarriage here. Here we go. Okay, so here's where my my pin is on the other side. So as close to this center line as I can, I am going to poke through, but before I do that, I am going to thread my my button on. Oh, look, my button is just barely big enough to fit through. Woo! Because this is a big needle. Okay, so I'm going to string that through as close to that line as I can. Okay, I'm going to poke it through this other side. I'm going to see how it looks on this side. Okay, cool. Going to get rid of my safety pin now because it's just kind of in my way. And awesome. So I'm going to pull my thread through. I don't have to go too crazy. I also want to keep an eye on it with my other hand, so I'm holding this so that my button doesn't fall off and I don't pull my thread through accidentally. Alrighty. Okay, cool. So I have that through, and then on this side I'm actually going to go through just the other side of the side seam, and I'm also going through the seam allowance of that serged edge. Okay, so this is what it looks like on the other side. Cool. Pulling it through. Okay, and when I do pull it through, I'm going to make sure that I go through the other side of my button, and my button's holes are just barely big enough to get this big honking needle through. My goodness. Okay, maybe not. Went through one side okay, but it's struggling on this side, so I'm going to do some twisting actions here. See if I can get this through.
You know who made it.
I don't know. Oof. Okay. A little force from the table, I was able to push it through. Awesome. So now that that's threaded, I can just remove my needle. I don't need my needle anymore. So needle goes to the side. Cool. All right, I have my loop, I have my button, and now you're probably wondering, well, how big do you make this loop, Lexi? That's a great question. You make the loop as big as you need it to be to just barely go over the button that you used, okay? So I used a pretty small button. In fact, my button is even smaller than this button that's going to help the knots from going through the back. So my width does not need to be that big. It looks about the size of like a pen. So I'm going to use a pen, literally. I'm going to use a pen to guide how big I need to make this circle, okay? And I just happen to have a disappearing ink pen, so I'm going to use that, okay? Cool. So, I'm going to literally start like I'm tying my shoe. Make an easy knot right there, okay? Awesome. And now I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to do it twice. I'm going to go around and around, okay? Tight. Cool. Is it moving anywhere? Not really. Good. Okay. And now I'm going to do it again. And maybe I'll go 3 times this time. Okay. And the lady who taught me to do bustles, she said, whenever you're doing 3, always just do 4. And she's a designer. Her name is Snehal. I'll have to look up her Instagram and link her. And honestly, she's never led me astray with that piece of advice. So that's what I'm going to tell you. Why do 3 when you can do 4? Okay. I don't like to leave a tail because, to be honest, the way I tie my things, they're not coming undone. I don't need a tail because it's not coming undone. Okay. So now this is what it looks like underneath. Very nice. And if you flip it over, this is what it looks like on top. Barely noticeable, but when it's time to bustle, you pull this up, and boom, we have a loop. We have a loop that is going to connect to our beautiful rhinestone button. Look at that. Next up is to have my prom girl come back, try on her dress, and she'll be ready to go to prom.